back to another week of Kate and Isaiah Living Large. I'm Isaiah.
And I'm Kate.
And on this episode, we're going to talk about different interventions of weight loss, be it medical or dietary.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, anything you want to talk to this coming month, weeks?
Yeah, well, I don't think I mentioned it in our last episode because I was so excited about you breaking your plateau that I am stuck in the same plateau that I've been stuck in for months now. And there's a range. And I think a couple episodes ago, I talked about how I'd broken it and I'd gotten down to the 399 mark again. But I can get on a scale on a Monday and it can be 405. And I can get it on a scale on a Thursday and it can be 399. But it's not going any lower and it's not going any higher. So it really is a true plateau.
Yeah.
And I recognize all the things about how you're not supposed to weigh yourself all the time. And I generally don't. But it's getting a little bit frustrating, which leads me, if I can make this transition, it leads me to some conversations that I've been having with my own doctor and my own stuff. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at my doctor for a regular checkup to get a re-up on my blood pressure medication. Because, not entirely surprising, does a person who is overweight have blood pressure issues?
Yeah. Crazy.
It's wild how that works. And so she's like, well, I hadn't been there in about a year. So is there anything else on your list? And I said, well, she had previously prescribed Ozempic to me. Yeah. So I took Ozempic about a year and a bit ago, and it truly did not work for me. No, and I've talked about this before. It didn't really work for me. And then when I went off of it, and I only correlated this after in conversation with other friends, I put on 55 pounds or something.
Right. Yeah, we had talked about that before. Is you had bounced back.
So I was telling my doctor this, and she said, and I've talked about this whole doctor's visit previously, but it does set us up for what came next. And what she had said, in case this is your first time listening, is she said it's normal for you to bounce back after some weight loss when you go off Ozempic. I was like, no, these were 55 new pounds that I found. And she went, oh, and then she asked the question. She said, have you thought about bariatric surgery? And truth be told, in my own head, I had been against any kind of surgical intervention.
Right.
Because I felt a great deal of shame. Like, I've done this to myself and I can fix it for myself. And yeah, I can go to the gym and have coaches and, and all those things, but that's not the same because I'm still doing the work. But to just succumb to surgery, I just, in my own head, could not get behind that. It certainly wasn't going to be anything I asked for.
Right.
Until I kind of was like, well, and she said, look, the wait list is super long. And so it's about a year to the guy I'm going to refer you to. And, you can make the decision then and just hear it out, because she said, and I've talked about this before too, but it really was life-changing for me. She said, obesity is a disease like blood pressure, like anything else, where there are so many factors that are beyond your control. We need to treat it like it's a disease. And so this is just another medical intervention and you meet the criteria.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about what bariatric surgery is. What does it entail?
Well, it's a litany of things that are all kind of fall under the same umbrella. And I think it depends on the person and the doctor as to what options there are. There's that lap band, which Amanda talked about when she was on the show, where they squeeze off part of your stomach with like a band, and then it gets filled up with
it basically means that you can't eat as much. You're basically restricting your stomach from
right. And they all have that same concept that they in some way restrict your stomach. And if you go full surgery, is they like cut off part of your stomach and reroute it. So this is gastric bypass surgery, which I think is the most severe, but also and least reversible, as in it's not reversible.
Well, you're
literally cutting pieces of your stomach off and rerouting it so that you can literally consume less.
Right.
And I've had friends who've had that done.
Yeah.
And I had a good friend once come up to me in an inopportune moment, but in a situation shortly after she had had it done, and she implored me to ask my doctor about it because she said, "This changed my life," and which was good advice. Except I was at a music festival, and I was like, "I'm gonna cry." So,
Yeah, yeah. So I have been doing a little bit of research and just like looking at some of the side effects. So I know that there is a ton of different side effects that can happen.
yeah.
So, what concerns do you have of those side effects? Sure.
Well, one for me is, well, the funny part about this episode and us talking about it is I misunderstood one thing from my doctor's office that was happening. They had called for another appointment and I thought it was with a bariatric surgeon, but it turns out it was my doctor calling me back to tell me she had to refer to me to a different bariatric surgeon because the person in St. John is like a private clinic and only does like people who are maximum 55 on the BMI scale, and I'm more than that. So I'm, I joked to myself, I was like, oh, I'm literally too fat for fat person surgery. Great.
You're basically skinny at 55. Like that's kind of crazy.
No, no, no. Your body mass,
55%?
yeah, 55%. You know, you're not skinny.
I mean, yeah, okay, whatever.
But
You're
like, they say a good average for somebody is between 20 and 25.
I have some issues with BMI.
Well, as do I, but that's one of the measures that they use in this particular office, which is fine. And my friend Katie, actually, when I was telling her this, I was like, Katie, and she was like, stop. And she did the calculation. She said, you would actually be at 55 if you lost another 50 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, no big deal. I've already lost 150. How about another 50? No big.
Whole.
Yeah, exactly. If I could do that. Which, you know, that's what has kind of started to alter my view. So the current, to your question that I've rambled on about, there are a few things that I'm really concerned about. I really want to weigh the cost and benefit, not financial cost, but the cost to my life of having the surgery and weighing that risk against not having the surgery.
Yeah, like what restrictions you're going to be able to
Right.
do with your rest of your life, basically.
Yeah, what does this look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years versus what will I look like if I carry on in a way that in a responsible way as I am today? What does that look like in 5 and 10 and 15 years? Because at the end of the day, I'm over 400 pounds and that's not good.
Right.
Whether it's my fault or not how I got here, that it's not good at, like I talked about at the last episode, is hard on your joints, let alone your heart and other things that make your body function. So there's some real risks with being over long-term overweight, like morbidly obese is
Right.
the term, which is a really terrible term medically, but it is the medical term. And the word morbid is in there for a reason.
Yep.
And so this is something to consider when there is surgical intervention at play. But then there's always risk with surgery.
Right.
And I believe it's a laparoscopic surgery, which I had when I had my gallbladder out, which is ironically one of the risks of getting the surgery is having gallstones, which I can't get. There's a win. And I managed through that surgery okay. My recovery time was a little slower than other people, but not too bad. And so I thought, okay, well, that's fine. My other concern is what happens to the hanging skin.
Yes, that is a concern I just have in general of losing weight.
Yeah, but if you do it like through the gym and gradually, is not as big of an issue as surgical intervention.
So, would that be a part of the surgery? Like once they've taken off a lot of weight off of you, would that not be a part of that added surgery?
What I don't know is it's not a part of it. It's a separate surgery that I do know. Second to that, the first surgery is covered by our Medicare system because of the aforementioned health risks and being morbidly obese. And that was only since 2004 in the research that I had done. And that's when they decided that being morbidly obese has like extreme negative health repercussions and hurts the Medicare system.
Oh, there's dental out there.
Yeah, exactly. versus it being purely a uh, thing for your looks. What's that word?
The word
Cosmetic surgery.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess the question would be: is is the removal of excess skin considered cosmetic?
And I didn't find that out. And whether that's a cosmetic surgery or whether that is a natural addition to bariatric surgery.
I would hope that it would be, because I can understand if you're just going to get it done, like getting skin removed done, it wouldn't be. But if you're getting like this surgery that is going to drastically change your body, that I would hope that would be covered.
Right. And then what I also don't know, so if anybody is watching or listening who is a medical professional who might be able to answer some of those questions, and I mean, I will ask them when I have appointments and things in the next year and a half, or whenever I get an appointment, is how much of that is covered and how dangerous is that surgery?
Yeah.
Or will it eventually fix itself?
Right.
Like, will the hanging skin, because, if I know that as you age, your skin gets looser, which is, everybody, you hear old women everywhere talking about the wave that keeps on waving. Well, honey, mine's done that since I was a teenager. But I am 40 now, which is, I think, still on a pretty good state of having some elasticity left to be able to recover more naturally. But if I was 50 or 60 or 70, that wouldn't be the same case. And so
you don't know. Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've said on this podcast that I'm not a doctor.
We are not medical professionals.
And please don't take medical advice from either of us.
No, but that's interesting. Yeah. I would hope that it would be covered, but that would definitely be a concern, is how drastically your body would change so rapidly that hopefully that.
Well, and then the other concerns I have too, if we're a year out and I've been working out for another year and I'm, generally fit, is it gonna affect, like, obviously there's surgical recovery time. Does that end up setting me back in some ways? Like, and it's about weighing all those costs and benefits. Yeah. And if I knew the answers, I
right
wouldn't have a podcast.
Right. No. And so I've been looking at other options that are out there. So you talked about Ozempic,
yeah,
which I think other people call it like glucosamine or something like that, which it's supposed to be a diabetic thing.
It started as a treatment for type 2 diabetes. Yeah. I do know that. And then it worked so well at people losing weight. But when you read the stats on it, it averages to be about 10 to 15% or 10 to 15 pounds a year, depending on which, I lost that easily.
Yeah.
It's what comes next.
So the people that I have seen using it are using it, use it in conjunction. They're males. They've talked about they had low T, and so they've been doing HRT, which is all in the news for other reasons.
What is HRT? I don't know.
It's a human testosterone.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Used in transitioning and things like that. So they've been using it. They've had that because their testosterone's been low, and then they've been using that in conjunction with Ozempic and working out, to help them lose weight and gain muscle mass. So it's been an interesting topic that I've been seeing coming around a lot lately.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because there are some side effects with Ozempic. There's side effects with everything.
Right.
And one of them is extreme heartburn.
Okay.
Another is just feeling sick kind of all the time, which, I mean, is how it works, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you just can't eat more than a little bit.
Yeah.
Which, is not a bad thing, except sometimes you want to eat. Even if it's a good thing, you want to eat more than a little bit.
Right. That's another one. That's one that's been popping up a lot more recently and online and things like that I've seen. And then there's the keto. Atkins, as it used to be called.
Well, Atkins was a little different in that you were allowed a little bit of carbohydrates. And I did Atkins when the book came out because I have tried almost every diet that exists. And it was interesting because it worked. I lost 25 pounds on
Yeah.
Atkins in a couple of months and then stopped, and I wasn't as heavy as I am today. So 25 pounds was a pretty sizable amount.
My fear with keto is you're putting your body into ketosis, which could be bad for you. Not supposed to go into.
I don't I'm afraid of it as well. Carry on.
Yeah, so that's my fear, is that putting my body into ketosis is a scary thing, and I know people that do it and they eat a lot, and there's a healthy way to do it and a non-healthy way to do it,
Yeah.
and my fear is that I don't pay attention and do the non-healthy way, which is just I'll eat a ton of bacon.
Right. Which, it kind of, my mom and I have this conversation all the time, and we're like, okay, keto could be great. And I think it could work really well. And I've actually been doctor recommended keto in the past and a number of years ago because there has been some proof of it working and
Yeah.
being able to take off a chunk of that weight. And it's something that I would kind of consider right now, but there's a way to do it with, lean chicken and fish and all that. Or there's a way to do it with bacon and cheese.
Right.
And as my mom always says, and as her father always said to her, everything in moderation. And when you
Right.
do anything extreme, it's going to kind of have a pendulum swing, right? It'll work really well and then it'll
Yeah.
go the other way.
And so I've been looking into those options just to go back to our conversation a couple weeks ago when we talked about plateauing. I feel like I've come to a point where I need something just to push me over the edge
Yeah.
to get to another stepping stone. So I've been looking into what the side effects are of things and what the temporary results versus what my swing back will look like, because
Right.
there will be a swing back once I stop doing any of the stuff that those medically medical options or non-medical dietary options. There's going to be a swing back, but
And that doesn't mean you shouldn't try certain healthy ones. Like I did a food plan at the beginning
yeah,
and I'm planning to go back on it. I just haven't done it yet. But it kind of followed some of those uh higher protein, some
right.
fat, and a ton of vegetables
Yeah, yeah.
and lower carb, not low carb, but lower
Lower
carb.
carb.
And it's not as extreme. Like it's a pretty, as far as plans go, it's a plan, but it
Yeah.
certainly is not terrible to follow. And I find it's one that I'm never hungry on it. When I was like, I almost said never full, but that's not what I meant. And it does work really well. But there are a few things that, as a person, and I think there are ways to not do this, but I need things to be fast and easy because of my
Right.
lifestyle. That you have to eat, like, for me, I had to eat like 3/4 of a cup or a cup of protein with every single meal and a ton of vegetables, which
Yeah.
gets expensive.
Oh yeah.
And there are a few things that you lean on pretty heavily when you're consuming that much protein. One is boiled eggs,
Right.
the other is cottage cheese, and the other is 0% Greek yogurt. To the point where, for a while after, if I looked at another freaking boiled egg or cup of cottage cheese again, I'd throw it across the room.
Yeah, and I think maybe the other things I've been looking into, I think, is the just learning more about micro nutrients and things like that, because that has a whole lot to do with dieting and how you eat, and I think educating myself more on that side of things before I like deep dive into like crazy diet
And
might.
I mean, and none of it's crazy. Like anything
Yeah.
that I do nowadays, like I mean, there was a time that I tried a juice fast. And
Nice.
that's not pleasant because I almost passed out 4 days in.
Did you do the like honey chili one?
I tried that, yeah.
My friend did that one
Yeah,
for a
because
while.
that's just under eating. But if you're doing anything where you're consuming real whole food,
Yeah.
including vegetables and protein, you're really not going to screw your body up that much. And it is worth trying to get that chunk of weight off because it's not really a crazy plan.
Right.
It's eating good,
It's
nutritious food
yeah.
and cutting things like alcohol out.
I
And
don't do well at
I know.
that.
Or finding a way to use that as your carb intake. Like, I don't think you have to do a whole degree in micronutrients to try something like that,
I
if I'm being honest.
so there are people out there that do like just kind of teach you about it. I know
Yeah.
there's lots little programs out there that you can like pay people and they're like, hey, let's talk about you eat and how you eat, and let's figure out what your micronutrients.
Well, and I'd like to know what a dietitian thinks of some of these things
Yeah.
too, because a dietitian is a medical
Right.
professional, and going back to surgery, I believe that it's an entire team that you talk to, including a psychologist and diabetes and diabetes. You speak with
Diabetes.
diabetes directly. No, a dietitian and like a whole team. It's not just the person who's going to slice and dice.
Yeah, no, and that would be that would be interesting. Maybe we can find someone that does dietitian stuff.
Dietitians, and there is a big difference in being a dietitian and being a nutritionist. I actually know a few dietitians. I probably I'm going to hit up a couple of old friends and see if they'll
Yeah,
come
it
on the
would be really
pod.
cool to have them on and talk about that kind of thing because that's a whole piece of the puzzle, right? Is understanding how food affects you, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. And if you happen to listen to this podcast, Sarah O'Hara or Christine Rorty, I am going to hit you up soon. I think Christine lives in Fredericton now, but I'm not sure that they do. I haven't talked to them in years. But
No, I think that's an interesting profession to be in. To be honest, there's I'm sure it's an ever evolving world of things you need to know, and I'm sure there's things that are being discovered today that are completely changing the way we think about.
right. Well, exactly.
Um, but going back to the medical side of things, so I know that so the one I was looking at the most was gastro bypass. Was the one I was
Yeah.
reading about. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just kind of reading about it just because it's the easiest one to find information about online.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like you said, it's the most. It seems like the most invasive of all of the things you could do.
Yeah.
Um,
And the most permanent.
and the most permanent. Yeah. So that I know someone who I thinking about it. I knew someone who did it, and yeah, they lost a ton of weight extremely fast. Um, and I don't know they to the point where I didn't recognize them. It
Oh,
was
that's wild.
kind of crazy. But that yeah, it's an interesting side of things is the medical options, and I don't think there's anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with having to do it because,
No.
like you said, there's just sometimes you just need to do it, and there's
Yeah.
medically those medical options are out there for you.
Right. And that's just it. And that's kind of the point that my doctor made. And what I said to my doctor too, I said, my hope is that in a year, 18 months, or whenever this doc calls me for my first appointment, I've already lost my 200 pounds. I'll be like, sorry, bro, I got this covered.
I'm good.
I'm not going to say I'm sorry, bro, to a medical professional, but like,
Sorry, bro.
sorry, bro. Probably shouldn't say that ever. I'm 40 years old. But, but, but if not, that's an intervention that is there and not without some thought and some
Right.
consideration. And there is a part of me psychologically that is worried that a lot of my identity is from being a big person.
Yeah.
And that is a big part of who I, quote unquote, a big part of who I am. And then I'm like, is my personality really governed by my size? But I don't know because it's all I've ever known.
Right. Yeah. That would definitely be that a concern, right? Is that's kind of who you are known, and that's how people see you, and so like,
Right.
how are people going to react to a lean, mean fighting machine, Caitlin Dean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure people would be fine, and that's not as big a concern as for me as I'm gonna feel about myself.
Yeah. That's
How does my personality shift? What happens there? And maybe it doesn't. Like maybe I'm still same old, same old. Who knows? But there is something to be said culturally of that, like jolly fat person.
yeah. No. Well, and that's a lot. Well, and I use it too as a masking thing, right? Is to
Right.
be a happy-go-lucky person around everyone. Is you mask it as being a bigger person. That's what you have to be. Everyone that sees you
Yeah.
as a. So yeah, no, I can definitely understand where you're coming from on that one.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And like, I mean, first and foremost, and it's what I've said from the very beginning of this podcast and this particular weight loss journey. It's not about the number. I know we talk about plateauing and things, but it really isn't about that number. Even today, when I weighed myself and I was more than the last time I weighed myself, I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. This is
Right.
fake. Like, I mean, it's not fake. It's a real data point, but frig. And I'm trying not to be obsessive about it. And like, so far, so good. And two, ultimately, I've got to do what's best for me to be healthy. In which
Right.
case, I need to rely on the medical profession to tell me what's healthy for me.
No,
I think it's
100%.
important that I ask questions and that we ask questions and that we talk about these things. But ultimately,
Someone went to school for a very long time to know the stuff.
and you know who didn't? Me.
But no, you're right. Like you have to ask questions, and you should ask questions about what how you feel, right? Because it's
Right.
always important to ask. Like, but at the end of the day, they went to school and they know best. As long as you know best about your mental state of it,
Yeah.
then hopefully you can come together as a group, which
Yeah.
you should. If hopefully doctors, and we talked about this before, the doctors have stepped up their game on that front.
Yeah.
So
Takes a village to lose half my weight.
but I think we had a great conversation this week.
All right.
And where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on Twitter at the Caitlin Dean, on TikTok at Fat Caitlin, on Instagram at Kate D or Kated, on Facebook at Caitlin Dean, and we're on Facebook as Kate and Isaiah Living Large with Kate and Isaiah.
Kate and Isaiah Living Large.
Kate and Isaiah Living
episode
Large.
Like 15 now. Come on now.
I know you said it the last few times though. I didn't have to. And what about you?
And I am Maritime Brews on all of the social medias. Everywhere you can find me, that is where I will be. I am thankful everyone listens. And again, if you are not watching on YouTube and you're on Spotify or wherever, if you ever want to watch the video, you can find us on YouTube. And don't forget to like, subscribe to get your notifications on when we drop our newest episodes.
Wednesday mornings.
Right. But until next week, bye.
See ya.